Hello, everyone. Today we are going to be doing our EL lesson through Zoom. So I want to share our learning targets. Our first learning target today that we're going to be talking about is I can find the gist of a narrative nonfiction text. Narrative means written like a story, and nonfiction is informational. So today we are going to be reading informational. Also, we're going to look at literal and non-literal meanings of words from the book, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. And then we're going to compare the author's point of view to our own point of view. And that's just how we view things. We talked a lot about that when we were in the module with Peter Pan. How we view things is going to be different than how others view it because of our experiences and our background. So today, let's start with the book, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. And I'm going to read this book out loud to you. And as I read, I want you to think, what is the gist of this? What is it mainly about? I think you're going to really enjoy it. It's written by William Kamkwamba and Brian Mueller. The pictures are by Elizabeth Zunon. So I'm going to switch to this mode. And there's actually a movie about this story too. It is a true story. Let's see if I can unzoom a little so you can see the whole thing. It's the best I'm going to be able to do. Let's do it like this then. Okay, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. In a small village in Malawi where people had no money for lights, nightfall came quickly and hurried poor farmers to bed. But for William, the darkness was best for dreaming. And Malawi is a place in Africa, in the southern part. I'll show you when we're finished with this story. He dreamed of building things and taking them apart, like the trucks with bottle cap wheels parked under his bed and pieces of radios that he'd crack open and wonder, if I can hear the music, then where is the band? His grandpa's tales of magic also whispered in the pitch black of his room. Witch planes passed through the window while ghost dancers twirled around the room as if 100 men were inside their bodies. So the gist of these few pages is that William had a lot of dreams. He was very creative, right? He dreamed about creating things, taking them apart, understanding things. At dawn, in the fields, William scanned the maze rows for magical beings, then wondered as a truck rumbled past, how does its engine make it go? Pay attention where you throw that hoe, his father shouted. You'll cut off your foot. So thinking about some of the non-literal and literal meanings of words and phrases in this story, let's look at this phrase here. William scanned the maze rows for magical beings. First, let's think about the word scanned. If he scanned the maze rows, to scan, usually think of using computers, right? Scanning something, copying it. But you can scan with your eyes. Scan means to take a quick look, right? And the maze rows. Maze is just another word for, use your picture clues, corn. So he's looking down the rows of corn for magical beings. Again, that just shows how creative William is. He's always thinking and wondering. For all its power over dancers and flying things, magic could not bring the rain. Without water, the sun rose angry each morning and scorched the fields, turning the maize into dust. Without food, Malawi began to starve. So thinking about this page, it's pretty powerful. We have a lot of figurative language or non-literal phrases here. Let's look at the first one that comes to mind. How about, without water, the sun rose angry each morning. Do you remember we talked about personification? When you give something that is not a human or not a person real feelings or emotions. So the sun rose angry. Can the sun really be angry? It doesn't have emotions. But thinking about that, what is the author trying to tell us? The sun rose angry each morning and scorched the fields, turning the maize, the corn, into dust. Looking at your picture clues, if that sun is very angry, we could infer then it's really hot, right? That's a hot sun. And without any water, we know that plants can't survive. And then if the plants don't survive, then there's no food, and then the people of Malawi are going to starve. Soon, William's father gathered the children and said, "From now on, we eat only one meal per day. Make it last." In the evenings, they sat around the lantern and ate their handful, watching hungry people pass like spirits along the roads. You can see in the picture clues here how the people are kind of like spirits, like kind of sad, the way they're not really there. They're just passing by. Money also disappeared with the rain. "Papani," his father said, "I am sorry. You will have to drop out of school." Now William stood on the road and watched the lucky students pass. Alone with the monster in his belly and the lump in his throat, for weeks he sulked under the mango tree until he remembered the library down the road, a gift from the Americans. So let's look at more of this non-literal phrases here. The monster in his belly, there's some figurative language. What do you think that is, the monster in his belly? Is there really a monster living in William's belly? No. It's the monster is the growling from being so hungry. So he's so hungry, his stomach is growling, and it's like a monster in there. And then for weeks he sulked. Just looking at your picture clues, you can figure out what the word sulked means. It's kind of when you're sad, right? You're kind of feeling sorry for yourself. Things are terrible. I don't get to go to school. So now we know the gist of these two pages. It's mostly about the fact that without the rain, they have no access to water. They can't eat. They can only have one meal a day. And now he can't go to school because there's no money to pay for it, because they get their money from their crops. So that's the gist. But as he's been feeling very sad, he remembered there's a gift from the Americans called the library. He found science books filled with brilliant pictures. With his English dictionary close by, William put together how engines moved those big trucks and how radios pulled their music from the sky. But the greatest picture of all was a machine taller than the tallest tree with blades like a fan. A giant pinwheel? Something to catch magic? Slowly, he built the sentence, "Windmills can produce electricity and pump water." He closed his eyes and saw a windmill outside his home, pulling electricity from the breeze and bringing light to the dark valley. He saw the machine drawing cool water from the ground, sending it gushing through the thirsty fields, turning the maize tall and green. Even when farmers' prayers for rain went unanswered, this windmill was more than a machine. It was a weapon to fight hunger. Ragazzi, Feppo, he whispered, I will build electric wind. So the gist of the last few pages, thinking back here, is all of a sudden, William has been going to the library and reading and learning about science. And he got an idea of how a windmill could help him. How a windmill could help him create electricity and get water to his people. And then he is motivated to do this. So that's the gist of those few pages. Also, let's go back to this phrase. He saw the machine drawing cool water from the ground, sending it gushing through the thirsty fields. More personification. Can fields really be thirsty? No, that just means that the fields are dry and needing water. And the windmill was more than a machine. It was a weapon to fight hunger. Now the machine, the windmill's not actually a weapon, but figuratively or non-literally, we can think of it as a weapon, because if he can get this windmill to work and he can get water, then the water will help the plants and crops to grow, which will then feed them, and that would be fighting hunger. In the junkyard, pieces appeared like rusted treasures in the tall grass. A tractor fan, some pipe, and bearings and bolts that required every muscle to remove. Tonga! He'd shout to the birds and spiders holding up his prize. But as William dragged his metals home, people called out, this boy is Masala. Only crazy people play with trash. Okay, so hopefully you're thinking of the gist of these pages here. All of a sudden, William is collecting junk from everywhere. He goes to the junkyard and he collects tractor fans and pipes. He's just collecting everything he sees. And everyone around him is kind of making fun of him, calling him crazy. Like, what is he doing? What does he need that trash for? After many weeks, William arranged his pieces in the dirt. A broken bicycle, rusted bottle caps and plastic pipe, even a small generator that powered a headlight on a bike. For 3 days, he bolted, banged, and tinkered while chickens squawked and dogs barked and neighbors shook their heads saying, what's Misala doing now? Again, here he is. He's working so hard trying to figure out how to build this windmill, but nobody understands. They all think he's crazy. What is he doing? He didn't have a Home Depot. He didn't get to go to Lowe's. He just went to the junkyard and found different things he could use. His cousin Jeffrey and best friend Gilbert soon appeared. Muribo Wanji, they greeted. Can we help with electric wind? Grab your pangas and follow me, he said, and took them into the forest. Together they swung their sharp blades into the trunks of blue gum trees, then hammered them together to make the tower. So blue gum trees are trees that they have in Malawi, and we don't have those here in Colorado. Standing atop, William shouted, bring it up, while the boys tugged and heaved. A crowd gathered below and gazed at this strange machine that now leaned and wobbled like a clumsy giraffe. Some giggled, others teased, but William waited for the wind. More, well, not personification necessarily, but figurative language. We're comparing with the simile how this windmill's like a clumsy giraffe. So thinking of a giraffe that kind of sways and has those long, awkward legs, that's how this windmill was. It's very tall and probably not very steady because he just put it together with what was around. And if we figure out the gist of these few pages, we can mention the fact that his cousin Jeffrey and his friend Gilbert helped him create the windmill, and people are now giggling and teasing him, but watching and wondering, what is going on? Like always, it came. First a breeze, then a gusting gale. And if you're not familiar with the word gale, I bet you could figure it out from the context. Gale is another name for wind, another word for wind. The tower swayed and the blades spun around. With sore hands, once slowed by hunger and darkness, William connected wires to a small bulb, which flickered at first, then surged as bright as the sun. Tonga, he shouted, I have made electric wind. And there it is. If we find the gist of these 2 pages, we would say that his invention actually worked. He was able to, with all the parts from the junkyard, put together a windmill, and the wind came, and once he used the wires to hook it up, he had electricity. And looking at our other learning target of non-literal words and phrases, it says, then surged as bright as the sun. Another figurative language, it's also a simile. Is it really as bright as the sun? No, but the author wants you to know it's pretty bright if you're going to compare it to the sun. Wachita bueno, a man yelled. Well done! As the doubters clapped and cheered, William knew he had just begun. Light could not fill empty bellies, but another windmill could soak the dry ground, creating food where once there was none. Magetsi, Amapafu, electric wind can feed my country, William thought. And that was the strongest magic of all. So this is a true story. I wish I had time to read this to you, but he was born in 1987, William was, and he grew up in a village of Wimby located in central Malawi, and he suffered from the lack of water and from the hot sun and not being able to have enough water for the crops to grow, and then not being able to have enough food or having the money to be able to go to school. But wow, talk about persevering. He was able to persevere and create this amazing invention to help his country. So he eventually used his windmill to charge a car battery, which then he could power 4 light bulbs in his parents' house. But his dream of pumping water wasn't achieved until several years later, and he built his green machine, which pulled water from a small well near his home and fed his mother's garden, allowing her to grow vegetables year-round. He was discovered in 2007, invited to speak at a TED conference in Tanzania. He'd never been on an airplane or even seen the internet. And so many people were moved by his story, they donated money to help send him back to school and eventually install a solar-powered water pump that irrigated his father's fields, forever protecting them from hunger. He is now, well, probably not now, but was a student at Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire. He's going to be an engineer and plans to return to Malawi to work on renewable energy for electricity and pumping water in villages. So again, true story, pretty inspirational. I hope you are inspired by that story as I was. It really has a great message of persevere, don't give up. There's always a way to solve your problems. He couldn't go to school, he was sad about it, but then he remembered the library and he learned and he researched. So that was pretty awesome. We're also going to be thinking about point of view. So in your Google Slides, you will see a section. Let me show you. Oh, I wanted to show you too. Here we are. Well, this is not us. We're over here in Colorado. If we travel, and I'd love for you to think about this, southeast to Africa, here's where Malawi is. This is the setting of the story we just read in Africa. But thinking about point of view, I know we have a lot of learning targets. You did a great job with gist and thinking about that figurative language. But we also want to think about point of view today. Sometimes an author's point of view is different from the reader's. And that's common, right? Because everyone has different experiences, especially with this topic. When you live all the way in Africa, your experience with water is going to be different than our experience here in Conifer. So I want you to be thinking, what is William Kamkwamba's experience with accessing water? What in the text makes you think so? And then I want you to think about what is your experience with accessing water, okay? Because how we see things is our point of view. What we think about it is our point of view. And that is shaped by who we are, how we were raised, our parents, our shelter, our gender. It's shaped by everything, our influences in our lives. So the point of view in this text about accessing water from his point of view, thinking about Williams, is definitely going to be a little different. How he grew up is going to change his passion for this. So in this text, the author's point of view about accessing water is that everyone should have access to water, and that the problem of accessing water can be solved with hard work and perseverance. How is this similar or different to your own point of view? I want you to share that with me on your Google slide. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. And if you are interested, there is, look it up. Ask your parents to see the movie, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. And I hope you can give yourselves a thumbs up for all 3 of these learning targets. If you're not quite there yet, we'll continue working on it.